You did the work, you left, you grieved, you rebuilt a version of yourself that you actually enjoy. And now the thought of dating again brings up a very specific fear. Not that you'll get hurt again, but that you'll lose yourself. That you'll meet someone and slowly give back every piece that you fought so hard to get back. The fear is wise, but it doesn't have to be how this goes. Welcome to The Other Side. My name is Carrie Hudson. I'm a therapist and a guide, helping women to break toxic relationship patterns, reclaim confidence, and develop the blueprint for healthy, lasting love. And today's video is for the woman who has done the work, she's healed enough, and she's ready to love again, but she's terrified of what wanting that might cost her. So by the end of this video, you'll know what holding on to yourself looks like in practice, not as a wall you build, but as a way you move. So let's get into it, because the truth is, old habits die hard. So all of the old people pleasing and the boundaryless behavior and all of those things may try to find their way back into your routine, back into the way that you do things, because the truth is you've only known one way to show up. And hopefully, as you've healed, you've been able to practice showing up very differently in just your platonic relationships, showing up differently with yourself. And so I want to really talk about that foundational work first, because some of those pieces are very important in terms of the way that you show up in dating and relationships with other people. And what's really important about not losing yourself is to have reclaimed yourself, right? So having done the work of spending time with yourself, meaningful time with yourself, whether that's in silence, whether that's in prayer or meditation, journaling, taking yourself out to dinner, engaging in hobbies, going back to school, doing things that you enjoy, doing things that benefit you in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be, necessarily these big lofty goals like getting a degree or whatever the case may be, but because that's just a piece of it, right? What's more concrete and more foundational is knowing yourself, right? You can't lose yourself. If you don't know yourself, you're already lost. So it's important to really lean into the foundation that you've established for yourself during your healing work of continuing to do the things as you date that you were doing prior to, right? Even developing a routine for yourself where, maybe you have a specific day and time you check in with family and friends. So that remains a priority for you, like specific dates on the calendar, so that this doesn't get touched by anything else. Specific times where you are engaging in self-care or self-connection, right? Where you do have your meditative time and all of those things to check in and touch base with yourself. And that's really going to be important as you're dating, because, a lot of times, especially when people tap into that familiarity that we have, we can sort of get lost in that and not pay attention to how we actually feel. So another big piece of this is recognizing and being very in tune and in touch with your emotions, right? Knowing how you feel at any given moment. And a lot of that requires you to really be connected with your body, right? Because that's where our feelings land. Just like you feel like you have to pee, you feel like you need to eat, those are all feelings that may not necessarily be categorized as emotions, but your emotions also manifest in your body as feelings, right? So whether it's a drop in the pit of your stomach, or a racing heart, or sweaty palms, or a flush in your face that maybe brings or is a sign of joy, right? Some of these are a sign of fear or anxiety or nervousness or whatever the case may be. And so knowing what your emotions are is really important, because maybe in the moment you can't do anything about it, or maybe it's not appropriate to do it. And actually, it's almost never appropriate to do anything about your emotions in the moment, because in most cases what you would do would be more of a reaction than a response, right? And we want to get away from just reacting and allowing our emotions to be in control. Our emotions need to just be information, right? And so we can experience an emotion and sit with it and tolerate it. It's a sign of healing, because those emotions are, gold as far as I'm concerned. They are data, they are information. So when you can spend meaningful time with yourself, reflecting on your day and knowing, ooh, I did have that stomach thing when I met up with him, or I had that racing heart the moment that she did this, that, or the other, right? Being able to recognize that and clock it, right? It might be the true red flag that says moving on, or it could just be something to be mindful of, right? And to keep an eye out for, and at some point maybe even to have a conversation about, if it's not something that's too much of an issue, right? But that's for you to be able to determine, and you can't determine it if you are not regularly connected with yourself and checking in with yourself, and sort of protecting your time, right? That is an important aspect about dating, because a lot of times we sort of feel this fire and it becomes all consuming, and we want to spend a lot of time with this person, which is natural, right? Especially if it's healthy, right? If you feel those dopamine levels rising, right? These are love hormones. It feels good. You're going to want to spend more time with them because you want that feeling. You want those hormone increases. You don't want hormone spikes, right? And that usually comes with some excessive interactions and some things that are quite overwhelming, that don't necessarily match where you are with this person, right? That is the sort of spike that introduces addiction to relationships and love, and that also will cloud your judgment. So, in this effort to not lose yourself and to really stay focused and to stay grounded, it's important to protect your time. And with that, it's important to, continue to be mindful of your boundaries, right? If you've done the healing work, then I imagine you've done a lot of practice in boundary setting, recognizing your boundaries, honoring your boundaries, right? Drawing the line with people, allowing people to walk out of your life, right, who don't respect your boundaries, is an important skill, right? Because if you are always holding on to everyone, then you are most certain to lose yourself, right? Because everyone just doesn't fit. Everyone doesn't align. And so being able to make sure your boundaries are, not strong and rigid, but that they're intact, right? That they're healthy, that they're alive, that you can express them and let it be, right? And so, with that, it's important to make sure your expectations and sort of your perception or your control of the outcome of these situations is loose, if not non-existent, right? You don't want to be controlling and projecting outcomes. You want to just, for lack of a better word, go with the flow. You don't really want to be a go with the flow type person. You want to have standards that you live by, but you also cannot hold rigid expectations for someone else, especially someone who you are just getting to know, right? And a lot of times we sort of have these rules that handcuff people, and that's not necessarily the way that we want to show up. I understand that often that is a way of protecting oneself, right? I need you to walk this line, right? But often people will walk that line and still deceive and hurt you, right? So being able to let go of expectations of others and simply hold some expectations for yourself. And that is the easiest way to really enjoy the dating process, is to be able to say, you know, this is on me, right? I'm going to allow other people to be themselves. I'm going to show up and observe and do my best to enjoy these situations. But this is all on me, right? So a healthy expectation, for example, that you can have in dating is, I'm going to enjoy dating, right? And that has nothing to do with the other person. You may not enjoy them, right? But if you step out for an evening out to go on a date and they're a jerk, you can go over there to the bar and have a good time. You can get in your car and drive away and go to your favorite dessert spot and indulge and have a wonderful time. You can go home and catch up on that thing that you really wanted to do anyway and have a good time, right? So one person, 2 people, 10 people don't have to ruin this experience for you, right? One person isn't everyone. So recognizing that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in your city, that some of which who are available to you, right? So maintaining your outlook and your expectations is a surefire way to enjoy your life, honestly. So it's not even just expectations in dating, it's expectations in general, and being able to have fairly loose expectations for people until you build that relationship, until it, you know, becomes integrated into who the two of you are together. And so, you know, a healthy expectation that you can have for someone else hinges on agreement, right? So if it's, hey, I'm going to pick you up at 6 and we're going to go out to this place, right? It is a healthy expectation for you to be prepared and ready for someone to be there at 6. Right? And if they show up at 7 without a call or a text to give you an update, then you can talk about how that expectation was not met. But to sort of have these expectations in your head that you hold for someone else isn't always fair, right? There is sort of a minimum level of expectation in terms of being respected, you know, honesty, all of those things. There are some foundational expectations that you can have. So I'm not saying, you know, be out here loose and, you know, without standards. There are standards that you can hold, but those are different than expectations, right? This is the standard that I have for myself, but you can do whatever you want to do. And if my standards don't align with your standards in the way that you show up, then this is not good for me. And so, you know, as we talk about confidence, that's one important piece that you know, really need to hold on to, and hopefully you took away from your healing process, is this confidence, not arrogance, but confidence about what it is that you deserve and what you're worthy of in terms of love and dating, right? So not settling for less, recognizing that I'm too good for this, right? And not too good for you in a, like, I'm looking down on you perspective, but I'm too good to be lied to. I'm too good to be stood up. I'm too good to be dealing with inconsistency. This is not behavior that I'm interested in. I'm actually too good to be spoken to in this way, right? I deserve honor. I deserve respect. I deserve, you know, X, Y, and Z, whatever's healthy for the level of relationship or the stage of the relationship that you're in at any given point in time, right? It's okay to hold yourself to high regard, because if you don't, who will, right? And so holding those healthy expectations is important. And then in thinking about some old habits that may creep up, you know, one would be watching your giving and how you show up with people, because takers, you're going to meet some as you're dating, and they show up in a particular way, right? In a way that sort of tugs at your heartstrings and wants you to give. And it's important to be able to sit on your hands, because when you do, you're able to see whether this person actually desires and just wants to have you in their life and wants to get to know you, or if they are positioning you to be dependent on you, right? If they need you, right? So choosing to be wanted versus needed requires you to break that old habit of always volunteering when someone has a sad sob story or when they're always the victim, right? And you step in and you're sorrowful and you're wanting to save the day and to give, right? And so it's something to be mindful of as you're dating people who very early on are like, this woe is me, and always has this tale of victimhood, right? It's sort of a sign that they are positioning you to take from you. So breaking that old habit of giving and overgiving and showing up with your hand, reached out with something in it for them, okay, is really important. Another old habit, and this one is sort of subconscious that happens, that's important for you to watch out for, is fantasizing, right? That doesn't necessarily go away as you heal. It's something that you have to be mindful of, because when you're meeting someone and they're wonderful, especially if they're tapping into things that are familiar, or sort of dynamics that are familiar for you, you will have a tendency to continue to fantasize. And if you think back to your old relationships, that's the one thing, probably the biggest thing, that got you caught up in those relationships, because fantasies inhibit our ability to actually see what's right in front of us. In fact, we see what's right in front of us, and sometimes fantasy is the escape, because I really want this person in my life, probably because they're just familiar and this feels like home, but I can't really tolerate what I'm seeing in front of me, so I escape to a fantasy, right? And now I'm seeing them as something that they're not, right? And so this is why maybe friends and family are trying to talk to you about this person and you can't see the forest for the trees, because you are stuck in la la land seeing some future with them that was never going to happen, okay? So being able to recognize and catch those fantasies. You may not be able to stop them. They probably will persist, especially when you meet people that you enjoy. But being able to recognize them and check them against reality. Sobering up, waking up and saying, this is actually the experience that I'm having, right? And that's very connected to your emotions, right? When you have those moments to yourself to reflect on your day, whether you do it at night every day, or in the mornings where you reflect on the previous day, being able to see the reality of your experiences, not just in dating, but everywhere, right? Because again, your emotions are information. This experience, I felt sad. This experience, I felt nervous. Well, why was I nervous? Right? What was there something about this person that was threatening, right? So all of those questions lead you to answers, typically, as long as you are looking at it from a place of healthy emotions versus like being triggered at times. And that's something totally different to get into in terms of triggers. But in terms of, again, old habits, being able to check your fantasies, check your giving, right? And checking this need to be needed, right? Making sure that you're constantly, and maybe not constantly, but that you are regularly evaluating this relationship, whether you are being wanted or needed. And an old habit that many of us have is just sort of taking what comes, right? And this goes back to being confident about what it is that you deserve. So being selective is really important, and it's very connected to being confident about what you deserve, because a lot of us never chose the person that we were with. We sort of chose it by default, but we didn't make an active choice that this is a person I can see myself with. I actually like them. I actually enjoy spending time with them. I can really see myself with them. This was sort of, in most cases, a passive acceptance that, oh, you like me. Okay. Right? So making sure that you actually like this person, and a lot of that again will go back to your own habits with yourself, right? Beginning to choose things that you like, that you enjoy, hobbies that you enjoy engaging in, people that you enjoy being around, food that you really enjoy that makes you sing, makes you dance, right? When you eat it. When you are connected to yourself on that level, this one might be a no-brainer in terms of, oh, I actually have options. I can actually choose this thing or this person, right? Instead of just being passively chosen. Okay? So in dating, you want to make sure that this is like a selection process on your end. Both of you are selecting. And, if this person is making choices or engaging in behaviors that are in opposition to what it is you want to be experiencing with someone, it's important that you don't make that about you, right? This is, again, another piece that I think is foundational to healing, is understanding that the choices that people make are not a reflection of you, that we are not that influential or powerful that we can make people be something, right? Everyone does what they do. Everyone speaks, acts, thinks from their heart, not from what you influence, right? If you influenced it, it was sort of fake. And a lot of times we'll see that in the earlier stages of a relationship where people will perform for us, right? But when you get down to the heart of it, if someone is acting ugly or rude or unkind, or they simply decide that you aren't the one for them, this isn't a reflection of you. Mostly. Unless they give you some feedback and let you know, like, hey, I didn't really jive well with this. Well, that might be an opportunity for you to self-reflect and improve. But otherwise, if, they ghost you, if they treat you poorly, again, this is not about you, and it is not an opportunity for you to fix yourself or shrink or perform. Okay? So if you are going to date again and you are not going to lose yourself in this process, it's important that you stand very disconnected from other people and their behavior, not just in dating, but in every area of your life, right? It's important to recognize that people choose and do from their own hearts, and it has nothing to do with you. Okay, so free yourself from that. I'm hoping, if you've come to this place where you are dating, that you are already free from that. But the reality is that there are always going to be some little nuanced things. Remember, at the beginning of the video, I said healed enough, right? It doesn't mean that this is completed or that you've achieved this perfect state. It means that you're a work in progress. And so as you're dating, this is probably the most salient area, right? The clearest place where you can see yourself, right? Because as I always say, relationships are mirrors, right? And if you are looking into the mirror of this relationship, right? If you're looking at this person, what you are allowing, right? The peace that you feel or not, how you show up for yourself, right? All of those things are showing you where you are in your healing process. And you might step out and put your toe into the dating pool and try it out for a little bit and realize, okay, these are the things I actually need to work on, right? And so it's important to not make that process about them or about the dating pool. That is about you, right? Because in many cases, we attract what we are, right? And the experiences that we are having are more telling about us than anyone else, because we can't even control or influence anyone else to that degree, right? And so if you want to improve your dating and, even yourself, dating is a good way to just see what's going on with you right, as you date. And then you can go back into the lab, get back in the kitchen, cook up some more things, heal a bit more, reflect. If you're in therapy, reflect with your therapist, talk about the process, and continue to make better choices. And it doesn't look like just trying to fix all these things, right? It could be one thing that you noticed about yourself while you were dating that you weren't really fond of, and you realize you're still pretty weak in that area, and that's okay. Being able to accept that is not a failure. It is just a part of the process. And I want you to really lean in and enjoy the process of dating, because I personally think it should be fun. It should be enjoyable, and it doesn't have to be sort of bleak, right? And recognizing, again, that where you are, the people that are attracted to you, the people that you are attracted to as well. It's not just the people attracted to you, because there will be lots of people attracted to you. But the people that you find yourself navigating the relationship with or spending time with is a reflection of where you are in your process. And if you feel like you're at peace and this is a good choice, then it's a good sign that you have made some significant progress, and this might be a wonderful place to land. And sometimes, even if it is peaceful, there's something more that you decide you want. And as you work on you, you will attract and also be attracted to more. So I encourage you to continue the work as you are healing, as you are dating, because it's really important to continue to grow and evolve and to be better, right? That's what we're all here for. And if you found that as you've listened to these practical steps in terms of dating and how to approach dating and things to watch out for, so that you don't lose yourself and you realize like, ooh, I have a long way to go. I have a lot of work to do. I want to invite you to connect with me. I'm here for that very reason, because I want to see you win. I want to see you win in love. I want to see you living a life that you enjoy. And so if you find that maybe there's some patterns and some things that you haven't yet worked on, I want to invite you to take the relationship pattern diagnostic. It'll show you exactly where you are, right? In terms of what patterns you're leaning into, where you're strong, where you're weak. And you will also be connected with me and my community, The Next Chapter, where I send you monthly notes of encouragement and, just things where you can heal, right? Notes for healing. And so I thank you for being with me. If you are sitting there and listening and you have not subscribed, what is it gonna hurt? Hit that subscribe button so that you are notified when videos drop here every other Sunday on Break Free Sundays. Thank you for staying with me. See you next time.